Hi, welcome to Resume Tune-Up for Alumni. My name is Roxanne Fenton, and I am the manager in career and professional development. Here's an overview of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to start with some good resume basics, just an overview of that for you all. And then we will go into talking about applicant tracking systems. And this is software that scans resumes automatically, often before a human being sees the resumes. And then finally, we'll address some special circumstances that you may need to deal with on your resume, combating ageism, and then job gaps and career change together as one thing. There are a variety of links that you're going to see in the slides and that I'll reference, and we will be putting those links in the chat box at the end of the presentation. All right, so let's start with good resume basics. First of all, you want to remember that resumes are scanned and not read, and that 15 to 30 seconds is not uncommon for a first look at a resume. So you really want to be sure that your resume is designed to give people information as quickly as possible and to not hide anything vital. So let's look at first resume language. There is a particular language to resumes that you need to learn in order to write a good resume. And one of those things is that you want to write in short sentences and phrases. No paragraphs, don't want to put more than a couple of sentences together without breaking it up visually. One of the ways that resumes are commonly broken up visually is through the use of bullet points. And you can format with bullet points, or you can do that in a similar way visually, but you do want to break up your text so that it's easy to scan. A key feature of the language of resumes is using action words. These are verbs, and you're always going to want to use these action words to describe your experience in your job positions. And we'll look at action words some more in a minute, so I'll go into that in more detail. But remember that action words are key to the language of resumes. Another basic about resumes is that no longer do we use the job objective. This used to be something that went at the top of a resume and said something like, looking for a position as a senior graphic designer to further my skills and develop my management abilities. That's not something that we use on a resume anymore. It's assumed that you're looking for a position. That's why you've applied. You may want to start your resume with something that is still written like that in a couple of sentences, that is a skills summary. And we're going to talk more about these later on in the presentation, but briefly, a skills summary is a couple sentences in which you highlight your key skills and achievements and point out how they relate to the kind of job that you are applying for. And then the last thing about resume language is that whenever possible, you want to quantify what you've done in your position. And that means using numbers. And you may think, well, I don't work with numbers. That's really easy for someone in sales who can talk about the sales that they've made. But we'll go into a little more detail about how you can use numbers even when that's not what your work involves. So let's take a look next at a key, just at a basic resume template. And it is a template, not a resume. But what you can see here is a basic outline of what we call a chronological resume. That's where you list your work experience in reverse chronological order. And the work experience is the main focus of the resume. You'll notice that a key thing you want to have on your resume in your information at the top is your portfolio website. And I've outlined that in purple. You want to always have your portfolio on your resume. Second, you want to have a good email address. Don't recommend using an AOL address or a Hotmail address, as those can make you look a little out of touch and like your skills with technology are a little old. If you can use a custom resume, a custom email with a custom domain, that's really excellent. If not, then maybe a Gmail or a mac.com email, something that's very current in the way people do email today. You'll notice that all the personal information is at the top. That makes it easy to find. When employers are scanning through a series of resumes, all that information is in the same place and they can easily scan it on your resume. I've often seen people put some resumes in a clever location, and I get what you're wanting to do design wise, but it does make it harder for the person reading your resume to see that easily. You may notice that this template doesn't follow the order on a resume that you may be used to. Resume information can be ordered in a variety of ways. And once you have experience, education is less important and can come at the bottom, which if I were showing you the whole template is where you would see it on this template. You may want to start by emphasizing skills. You'll notice also that they've used bullet points and that each statement in the bullet points starts with an action word. I have a couple people who've raised their hands. I'm just going to be honest that with the technology today, I don't think I can answer your raised hands, but if you would like to put your questions in the chat feature, I will try to address them as I go. We will have a Q&A at the end, and I will answer questions that come with the Q&A. Okay, I said I would say more about action words. On the CPD website that you got to see for a moment, we had Art Center. Yes, it is a good idea to put your LinkedIn address at the top of your resume. That's, I'm not going to have a lot of time to go into LinkedIn today, but that is something that you can put at the top of your resume. People are going to be looking for you anyway on LinkedIn. You might as well include it. Action words. This is a bank of action words, and if you go to the artcentercpd.com website, on the resume page, you can download the resource that this list of action words is taken from. So if you need a bank of words to help you use those in your resume, then we have one for you. And I'll just show you again a little bit of action words in use. So this is pulled from one of our sample resumes, and you'll see, as I've highlighted in purple, that each line in the experience under this particular job starts with an action word. Usually you use them in the past tense if it's been completed, and you can use them in the present tense if it's about your current job and it's ongoing. So that's a little bit about action words. Again, those are key to the language of the resume. I did say we were going to talk about how to quantify on your resume. And the first thing to think about is that you are focusing on the results of your experience, what you've been able to produce, rather than the duties or the tasks that you did in that job. Using a range of numbers is a good strategy when you don't have or can't get exact numbers. You can indicate the frequency with which something happened. That's a good way to get a number in. And you can talk about the scale. How many people were involved? How many design projects did you undertake? Anything that helps somebody understand the scale at which you're working. And then finally, when you put these on your resume, you want to use numbers and symbols to help make that information very quickly readable and to keep the length of the text down. So let's take a deeper look at how to focus on results rather than duties. So here's an example where as a duty or a task, you might have been responsible for chairing the student event promotional committee. That's the duty or a task, but it doesn't say much about the results of you being on that committee. Instead, as a result, this is written as chaired a promotional committee of 12 and presented marketing plans to an audience of 40 to 60 students at weekly university senate meetings open to all 2,000 community members. So here we've got numbers that introduce scale, a committee of 12, an audience of 40 to 60, and a meeting open to 2,000. You got a range because the audience wasn't stable each time, the people who attended that meeting. So you use a range to express that. So that's one way to quantify experience. Here's another example where the duty or the task was to complete the first editing pass on articles. That's a task, but it doesn't give much context for the job that was done. Focusing on results, it's rewritten as reviewed and evaluated 40 to 50 topical articles per week. Again, there's that range and it gives scale. Then it gives a little more detail to put this in context. Decided to either pass articles to the editorial team or send articles back to authors for further revisions. That gives more of a sense of how the task was incorporated into the overall job and into the overall teamwork at that company. And you can see more. I drew these from an article by Lily Zhang, and the link to the article will be in the links at the end. And she has some other great examples of how to quantify your tasks if you don't work with numbers. Let's look at one more example. This one is drawn from a sample graphic designer resume. Here again, we have led a team of 3 designers. That talks about scale. Developed 300 plus graphic design projects. So again, you don't have to have an exact number, but you can suggest the scale. And cut client costs by an average of 15% in 18 months. One way to get a number like that is if you know that you work quickly or that you have saved your client time. Time is money. And you can take the time saved, multiply it by the cost of labor and materials, and you can get a percentage of money that you saved the client over a period of time. All right. Resume layout. This is the next thing that I want to tackle. Again, everything should work towards making it easy for someone to look at your resume to get information out of it. Going on to a second page is increasingly acceptable, especially the more experience you have. You don't want to stretch to get to 2 pages. 1 page is still the best if you can, but it is an option, 2 pages if you really can't fit everything on 1 page. So you want to use white space effectively. Sans serif fonts currently read as more contemporary than serif fonts. I've seen this advice in a couple of places. I would really advise against using Times New Roman. It is the default in Microsoft Word still, but it's a bit of a tired font. You want to use consistent headings and consistent date formats. And as I mentioned, keep it to 1 to 2 pages. So let's take a look at our template again. Even though this is minimally designed, white space is being used carefully to highlight information. And the headings for the job title, the company, and the location, those are all going to be the same information in the same order, in the same place, at the same level of text and font for each position. Similarly, the date placement and formatting is consistent so that every date lines up. You really want to make sure that someone can scan your resume. I've said this before, but I'm really emphasizing it. Scan your resume and pick out the key information, like the job titles and the dates that you worked them. All right, so that's the basics. Now we're going to talk about beating the bots, ATS. What is ATS? Well, ATS is an applicant tracking system. And this is software that filters resumes to make it easier for hiring departments to sort through hundreds of applications, often when they have multiple positions posted at once. The first level of filtering is done by the software before a human being even sees it. And employers can use ATS software in different ways. Some will review all the resumes anyway, really briefly, but the employer might get an automated list ranking the resumes and only look at the top ranked resumes. Other employers will do a keyword search and look at the resumes that do the best job of matching the keywords from the job description. So we recommend having 2 versions of your resume. And this is a specific art and design problem. One that is designed and shows some of your design layout skills. This is particularly important for graphic designers, that you can email or attach that's going directly to a human being when you know that's the case, or if there's an option to upload additional files when you apply, and one in a more basic format for an ATS submission. Something like 90% of Fortune 500 companies are now using applicant tracking systems. And if you're applying online through a website, through Indeed, through LinkedIn, to big tech companies, your resume is almost certainly going through an applicant tracking system. I'm going to talk a little bit about how this works on the resume today, but we do have a previous workshop that you can see on our Vimeo page that was about what applicant tracking systems are and how you can work with them. And we have a workshop coming up next Tuesday that's all about a particular resource we have for you called JobScan. And that'll be how to use JobScan to ATS proof your resume. And again, that's Tuesday at 12 p.m. And that one will also be recorded. So ATS layout. ATS systems are not good at parsing complex layouts. So the best format, the best file format for your resume is a Word doc, a .docx format, or a very basic PDF that you are sure will scan for text recognition. So it can't be something that you've generated from Photoshop that's going to show up as an image or a non-scannable PDF. Some of the formatting that you need to avoid are using headers and footers. You can't put information in those because the ATS system usually doesn't scan it. You want to avoid columns and tables. Again, the ATS usually can't parse that and the information will get mixed up. It'll try to read across rather than down. You want to avoid fonts that need to be downloaded, and you want to avoid graphics. So what that looks like is, here are a couple of ATS friendly resume templates. And you can see that even though they are very simple, there are some design elements, especially in the one on the left. And white space is still being used strategically. So this is an example of resumes that are probably going to be read okay by an ATS software. There are lots of really creative resume templates out there that you can find, especially on places like Canva. And these are not going to be read properly. The graphics, the icons, the ways of presenting your skills and information with stars or with bars or dots, the use of columns. ATS is not going to do well with this information. I got a question in the chat and the Q&A, is it better to put ideas It's a better idea to put work experience first rather than education. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in the next section, so hold that thought. So examples of a not ATS friendly resume. The other key thing for making your resume ATS friendly is the language that you use. You are going to have to customize your resume for each individual job. This is something that you should be doing anyway, but it's absolutely crucial if your resume is going through ATS software. Because keywords are so important, and because the ATS system is matching the keywords in your resume to the keywords in the job description, that's why you've got to get those keywords into your resume. You also want to try to get the job title from the position that you're applying to into your resume if you can. Now, there may be situations where you absolutely can't do that, but if you can do it, it's a great thing to put in. And one thing that you can do is if you have an equivalent job, but it's not under the same job title, you can put the job title that you actually had, and next to it, you can put in parentheses the industry equivalent or the generic job title, the one that might be on the job description. So let's look at keywords. Here I've taken a portion of a job description and I just did a quick highlight of different keywords in the description. And I think this is always a really good place to start because it lets you get a sense of the keywords that are in the job description and starts to put them in your mind. Then what's really great is you can use JobScan, which is software that lets you copy and paste or upload your resume to see how well it would do in ATS software. This lets you see what information the software is likely to get out of your resume based on things like layout, if it's a PDF, etc. And then you can upload a job description to see how well your resume does at using the keywords in that job description. And then you can even use JobScan to quickly edit your resume based on the suggestions. Art Center pays for premium JobScan access, and you just have to go through Art Center Connect. It's tied to your Art Center Connect account. Look under resources on the lower right of the homepage and click on the link that says JobScan. And there's the link to access Art Center Connect, and that will also be in the links at the end of the talk. So what does JobScan look like? I've cut and pasted some screenshots. This is where you would start. I cut and pasted in information from a resume template, and then I cut and pasted in the job description. And then you click the button at the bottom to scan. And JobScan gives you a number of things once you've done a scan. And again, I'll refer you to our other workshops to learn more specifically about how JobScan works. But one of the things they do is they give you a list of skills in 3 categories. The first category is hard skills, which are very important to make sure are in your resume. And you can see here that my resume template did not match the job description very well. I got very few of the keywords that JobScan identified into the resume. So I would have quite a bit of work to do to update this resume. But you can see here kind of what JobScan sees as hard skills. Those are usually the technical skills that the job requires. Then there's the soft skills or the people skills that companies also want to see that you have. And they're less likely to be searched by recruiters, but they are important. And again, here you can see the soft skills that were found in the job description that I uploaded. And again, I have some work to do to get the resume to match that. And finally, there are other keywords that have appeared more than 3 times, and these are often company specific. Now, because we're in art and design, some of the keywords that show up in other keywords may actually be much more important to include. So you kind of have to use your judgment and your knowledge of the industry to focus on which keywords are most important for you to get into the resume. So that's an overview of ATS software, the issues with layout and design, and the focus on keywords. And I'm going to move on to the last section, talking about special circumstances. These are circumstances that you might encounter or you might encounter in the future. Questions about ATS that we're getting before I go on. ATS format is bad design. Yes, you're right. Unfortunately, we're stuck with it. More and more companies, even companies, especially large companies that hire designers, are using ATS. If you want to see what you can get away with in terms of design, what I recommend doing is formatting your resume, going to JobScan and uploading the resume. Don't copy and paste the information, but upload the resume. And JobScan will show you what most ATS systems are able to take out of your resume. And that will show you what you can get away with. This is why we recommend having two versions of your resume, one that is designed and does show your design skills, and the other is the more ATS formatted resume. Those ATS friendly resumes that I showed you, that's what resumes look like in non-design fields. That's a really common formatting. So it's really a problem because we're working in art and design, and ATS is not designed to recognize that. I will say that if you are applying to design firms, especially if they have posted on Art Center Connect, or they're accepting applications via email or applications through their own website, you're less likely to be going through ATS. You're going to encounter this when you are applying to the bigger companies, and especially companies that have multiple fields that they hire from. Amazon, Facebook, Google, anytime you're applying to those companies, Apple, you're most likely to run into an ATS system. Okay, let's go to special circumstances. Concerns about age discrimination. Age discrimination is a real concern, both for people who are older than average in the job market and for those who are young and just starting out. People can assume that you are older and therefore out of touch, and maybe not as quick of a learner. People can also equally assume that you're young and you don't have a lot of experience, and that it's going to be harder to train you and bring you up to speed. I'm mostly going to address the older end of the age discrimination issue here, but some of the tips will apply in both contexts. So, ways to combat age discrimination specifically on your resume. One is to leave off your graduation and education dates. This is becoming more and more of a common practice across the board. And it's not something that you absolutely have to have, especially as you have more experience. Your education is less important than the job experience that you have. And you can even put your education at the bottom of the page. Obviously, this is most relevant if you have a lot of relevant job experience and you don't need to highlight your education. But you can leave off the graduation dates. That just makes it a little harder for people at a glance to get a sense of how old you are. You want to list only recent experience and no more than 10 years of experience, and really only the 4 to 5 most recent or relevant experiences. Your resume is a way for you to show how you are qualified for a job position. It's not a full record of your work history. A lot of employers are going to ask you for that work history on an application anyway, so you don't need to put it on your resume and you don't need to put that front and center. And another thing that you can do is to focus on your skills. And this is why I showed you a resume template that starts with a skills section. because that puts the first thing that people are going to see when they look at your resume as those skills. And this is a great way to make sure that something crucial doesn't get buried at the bottom of a resume when a person is looking at it. Again, for an ATS, the key is going to be to get those keywords in there wherever they are in the resume. We did have a question. What if you're a new graduate but significantly older than the rest of your peers? That's really a good question. Many of these tips are going to apply. You're going to leave off your graduation and education dates. You're going to include your most recent and relevant experiences, and you're going to focus on your skills. You may want, if you're using if you are doing a career change, I'm going to talk about that next, and the kind of resume you want to use in a career change situation. Something else that you may want to use in this situation is a resume summary. I mentioned this before, but here's an example of a resume summary. This one is maybe a little bit long, but it's not too bad. That lets you highlight skills and experiences. You can see that there's a number in there of more than 100 brands. Lets them indicate that they're really interested in the startup environment. A resume summary goes right at the top of your resume under your contact information, and it's a great way to really guide the reader of your resume in how to look at the experience on the rest of the resume. It's also a great place to work in keywords. Resume summaries are something that you can choose to use or not. You don't want to get it too long is the key. So those are some tips for combating ageism specifically on the resume. There are things that you can do beyond the resume, and I just want to touch on those here. Take advantage of opportunities to let employers or recruiters know you as more than just information on a resume. When you apply for a position, reach out directly to hiring managers and HR contacts at a company, and take the opportunity in that outreach to highlight what you can offer the company. Also, if you're just building networking within your field, it's more likely that people are going to know you and know you as a person rather than just facts on a resume. You also want to use your cover letter effective. If you have the opportunity to submit a cover letter with an application, you absolutely want to do that. The cover letter is where you show how your skills, not your job experience, help address the needs of the company that you're applying to. And then you use your job experience as examples. But you're really focusing on showing how you have the skills to do the job the company needs done. So take advantage of opportunities beyond just submitting your resume to let employers know you and know what a great candidate you are. So that's just a little bit about combating ageism on the resume. And now I'm going to talk just a little bit about job gaps and changing careers. Both of these situations are where the chronological record of your employment doesn't tell the whole story or the right story for your employment. And so one key tool that we have for those situations is the chronofunctional or hybrid resume. These are resume layouts that emphasize the skills and the achievements that you've made and de-emphasize your work chronology. This emphasis on skills really lets you focus on the skills you can transfer from one industry or one career to another. And not surprisingly, we call these transferable skills. We're getting a lot of questions, and I'm going to just finish up the rest of this presentation, and then I will get to your questions because I think they're really great. So in the situation where you are a new graduate, but you have a lot of work experience, you might want to use a chronofunctional resume because it lets you highlight the transferable skills that you have rather than focus so much on your chronological job history. So here is a template for a chronofunctional resume or a hybrid resume. It starts with a resume summary. Then you have a section that takes up more space on skills. And finally, you have a section of accomplishments. This is where you're going to pull out some of those results, some of those accomplishments from specific work environments. You're not going to focus so much on the job you had when you achieved them, but you're going to focus on the achievements themselves. And this lets you, again, emphasize the experience that you have, but in a way that's transferable. You want to be sure that when you write your resume summary, you're writing a summary towards the job that you want, not the experience that you've had. And this is especially true for job changers, career changers. This resume still includes work experience in a reverse chronological order, but you're only going to choose the 4 most relevant positions, 3, 4, 5. And you're not going to list your day-to-day job duties. You're not going to write as much because you've covered that with your achievements section. And you can also go into far fewer details about an older position. If you want to list an older position, you can even just list the company and the location and the job title and maybe a 1-sentence description of the position. You can also put those in a category called other career experience. Again, you want to write your resume summary. This is the same summary I had before. I'm just bringing it back. That speaks to the job that you want, not the job that you're coming from. Again, it's important to get beyond the resume and take advantage of opportunities to let people know you as more than just your resume. So outreach, cover letters, just as I discussed before. Finally, for everybody, in all of these contexts, your interview skills are going to be important because the interview is really where you can tell the story of your experience and really help the interviewer understand how you're the right candidate for the job. Unfortunately, I need to leave time for Q&A, and interview skills wasn't really the focus of today's presentation, but I do want to share resources that we have with you for practicing your interview skills. We have another software product that you have access to that Art Center pays for called Big Interview. And there's the link both directly to Big Interview and to our page on our website describing Big Interview. Big Interview has videos that you can watch, practice questions that you can answer. You can record yourself, play your answers back, see how you're doing. There's really a deep well of resources in Big Interview. You do need an Art Center email address to sign up for Big Interview. You have to briefly register for an account directly with Big Interview, and that needs to be an Art Center email address. All alumni can get an Art Center email address that ends in alumni.artcenter.edu, and you get that from the alumni office from Alum Network, and their email is alumni@artcenter.edu. Finally, so you're working on your resume and you'd like somebody to review it. Our office can help you with email resume reviews. This is where you email us your resume. Our career advisors read it, give you feedback on the document, usually on the PDF or in the Word doc that you sent us, and email you back. So it's a great way to get a read on your resume. Just reach out to us at careers@artcenter.edu and let us know your name and either the field or area of your work interest or the major that you graduated with. That will help us get your resume to the right career advisor. And finally, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us at careers@artcenter.edu. Again, our resource website is artcentercpd.com, and you can follow us on Instagram at artcenter.cpd.